So now let's move on to installing Ubuntu onto our computer. Now I'm going to be running this in a virtual machine, which is what I suggested earlier in the series. Now the way that I'm going to be doing this is I'm going to be downloading a virtual machine manager like VirtualBox. So you can go over to virtualbox.org and download VirtualBox, and you can install it on Windows, Mac, and Linux. So it's available on all operating systems. Now, once you have installed or downloaded it and installed it, you should receive a VirtualBox manager where you can launch virtual machines and set the parameters of your virtual machine. So we're going to be using this. The other thing that we will also need is a copy of Ubuntu. Now you can get that from ubuntu.com. You go to the download section, and what you want to do is get the 20.04 LTS. LTS stands for long-term support. And so that will now download through. Now, what you can do, it is a fairly large download, so it may take a little bit of time. I've already downloaded it, so that's fine. It's 2.6 gigabytes. So that is something that you will need to download, and I'll show you how to configure that in your VirtualBox as well. So I'm just going to hit cancel that. I've already got a copy of that in my downloads folder. Now, in my VirtualBox manager, I am going to create a new virtual machine. And what I'm going to do is call this maybe Ubuntu Node Box. And I'm going to save this in a folder or rather on my SSD that I have formatted and cleaned out. So if you have a look at this, this is my sort of Windows Manager here, and you can see that I have a 1 terabyte SSD. It's completely blank, and it essentially will host all of the virtual machine documents that are required. Now, this is on a separate drive, as I mentioned earlier. It's on that SSD that's plugged in via USB cable. So this is the folder there that all of the entire virtual machine will end up going into. So we will navigate through to Other and go to that node, and we will give that folder or that SSD or that drive access to our virtual machine. So we'll open there. We'll also then go into, so this is type Linux, and we will do Ubuntu 64-bit. So we'll click next. Now, in terms of RAM, I have 32 gigabytes of RAM. I would say minimum, you probably want to give 4, but since I've got the capacity, I'm going to give this 8. So that's a good size for me, and that will work for me. So I'll go next for that. And I will also create a virtual hard disk now. So I'm just going to create something, and we'll do a VDI, a VirtualBox disk image, and we'll go next. I'm going to do fixed size. It says here are the sort of the options as to what are the benefits of them, and it says here a fixed hard disk file may take longer to create on some systems but is often faster to use. So I'm going to use the faster one. So I'm going with fixed size. And I'm going to give this 850 gigabytes, which will fill up the entire drive. So we'll hit create there. Okay, so hopefully now you will see here a folder being created called Ubuntu Nodebox, and you can see all of the VBox extension files that have just been created because of that. Now we need to just amend a couple of settings here. And what I'm going to do is go into the system here, and we said that the RAM is going to be 8 gigs, and I'm just going to give this CPU 2, and I'm going to do video memory. I'm going to go all the way to 128 meg, and storage is fine, audio is fine, network. Now I am going to make this bridged adapter, and what this will do is essentially assign this VirtualBox a brand new IP address. So my router will think that this is a brand new computer coming onto my network, and it will get assigned a brand new IP address. So that is something that I would want, and that's what I'm doing here. Everything else looks to be okay. Now, on your first startup of this machine, it'll ask you, so we're happy with this. I'm just going to go start now. And on the first startup, it'll ask you, okay, well, what operating system do you want to start up? And so you can then, search that file that you downloaded, and so you can add that disk image, and for me it is in my downloads folder, so I'm going to use the Ubuntu 20.04.1/desktop file. So I'm going to open that one up there, and I'm going to choose that. So and we'll hit start. Probably get rid of these notifications. Okay, so here I will go into install Ubuntu. English US is fine for me, so I'll just go continue. And I'm going to use a minimal installation here, not the normal one. I just want to have the web browser and basic utilities. And I also will download updates while installing Ubuntu, and this saves time after installation. I'm happy with that. I'm not going to install third-party software for graphics or Wi-Fi hardware because I don't need that. So we'll continue. Now, this is where I will completely erase the disk and install Ubuntu. It's going to be erasing the drive that I created earlier, the 850 gigabyte drive. So that is okay to install now. And it'll just make sure that you actually want to do this. So I'll just hit continue. I'm going to select my time zone. I'm in Sydney. I'll continue. And this is where I am going to fill out some of my details here. So my name's Katan. The computer name, I'm going to name it Ubuntu Nodebox. I'm going to pick a username. I'm going to leave that as Katan. And a password, I'm just going to pick a fairly fair password. And I'm just going to set this up to log in automatically. So we'll go next. Now, whilst this piece of software does install, I think it's probably worthwhile understanding why I have chosen Ubuntu, and just a little bit of overview of Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a flavor of the is a Linux distribution. It's an offshoot of the Debian-based distribution, and it's basically a great place for beginners to start. It's got all of the features there that are really customizable, as well as you'll find a lot of support as well. So if you wanted to do something in Linux, generally speaking, if you add whatever you want to do plus Ubuntu into Google, you will definitely get someone who has experienced that problem or is trying to fix something, and there will always be support. It has great support for beginners. Now, the other thing is that when you read instructions on the internet for when you want to install something or you want to do something, generally speaking, Ubuntu comes up as the first item on the list of how to install pieces of software and all those sorts of things. So I think that is a great way to start learning, and it's a great introduction into Linux if you've never done that, if you've never done this before. So I think having Ubuntu as a starting point is a great place to start. Now, for me personally, I use Pop! OS as my daily driver. As you can see in the background, this is Pop. I'm actually using Pop! OS, and I have found that to be, fantastic. I've really enjoyed that one, and I've done a lot of other distro hopping as well, and you might like to as well. With VirtualBox, you can just start to explore other Linux distributions. You might go into Linux Mint. You might want to try out one of the other distributions like Manjaro or Arch Linux. That's a little bit more involved, and so there's a lot of things that you can do with Linux and customize it to how you want and what you want on your operating system when you install it. But Ubuntu gives a great blend for beginners to at least get a foot in the door, I guess, when learning. And this is kind of where I started as well. And then I kind of moved on and did more distribution hopping just out of interest. And I think that Ubuntu, whilst it's not perfect, it doesn't have the best of everything. It does have a great blend of beginner level or entry level usability, functionality, and pretty much everything that you need to know. A lot of the guides on the internet are all Ubuntu based, and so you can really start to use this as a beginner. So that's kind of why I have chosen Ubuntu. Another thing with Ubuntu is this is a long-term support edition, so LTS, and this is supported by the developers for up to 5 years. So you'll continue to get all the security updates and those sorts of things for another 5 years. So this was released in April of 2020, hence Ubuntu 20.04. Now, they release a new long-term support version every 2 years. So whilst they support this for up to 5, the next version of the LTS will be 22.04, presumably. If all goes well. And so the developers will then release that, and everyone can either upgrade to that or, stay on this if you so wish. It's very, very popular. You will find that it has a lot of support. It has a great community behind it as well. And if you want anything done, you can easily Google it and you'll find, and even if you're getting error messages and those sorts of things, there will always be someone who can, guide you to what you can potentially do to resolve those issues. So that is why I have chosen Ubuntu. It's a great operating system, and I'll just wait for this thing to now install. Now, the other thing is that all the information is stored here. So this has all your VirtualBox settings, as well as the actual hard drive. You can see that this one is 912 gigabytes, which takes up the space of the entire drive. And so all of the blockchain and everything that I download and everything that I do will be stored in this file here. The moment that I delete this and wipe this clean is the moment that everything kind of disappears. So it's very customizable in running a virtual machine. It's actually very, very handy to do. And it's great for learning as well. So if you, in case you make some sort of mistake, or you want to start again, or you want to take some snapshots and those sorts of things, which I'll show you how to do as we move on to this. Now, in your VirtualBox manager, you'll be able to sort of delete, shut it down, and you can also remove. That's blanked out because of this VirtualBox is running at the moment, but you can remove it, and then once you hit that, it will just delete all the files that are in this particular folder here. So that whole folder will delete itself once you hit remove. So that's kind of how it works. All the snapshots and those sorts of things are all saved in this folder as well. So it's really, really handy to have things in a virtual machine, utilize it for learning purposes, and then you can then deploy this onto hardware that you have purchased elsewhere, or if you want to run this headless, you can do that as well. So it really is kind of up to you how you want to play this and how you want to kind of learn, and then you might want to deploy it later onto a production environment. So this might just be your test environment as you play around with all the Bitcoin software that I'm going to go throughout the series. So that just gives you a bit of an overview of the advantages of running it in a virtual machine first, learning the software, understanding it, getting to a point where you're comfortable and you know it kind of works. Then you can move on to other initiatives, like moving on to a separate boot disk, or even running it 24/7 on a separate dedicated box. Up to you how you want to play this, but this is a great place to kind of just go and learn and get your dip your toes into the water kind of thing. Oh, just another note when it comes to the installation of this, of the operating system. Now, if you were to install this on a hard disk drive, I think it takes about an hour. Whereas if you were to install this on an SSD, it takes somewhere in the vicinity of 15 to 20 minutes. So that's the difference between the speeds. It is highly recommended that you use an SSD to do all of this functionality. And so you will just find it a little bit snappier, it's a lot quicker, and you will find you'll have a better experience if you run it on an SSD as compared to a hard drive. The hard drive will be significantly slower. Okay, so it says here installation is complete. You need to restart the computer in order to use the new installation. Restart now. And then it says, please remove the installation medium, then press enter. So I'm just going to press enter. What we'll do here is just skip connect your online accounts. No need. We'll go next on that. And no, don't send system information, and next. Next, and you're ready to go. Done. All right, well, welcome now to your Ubuntu machine. Now, the first thing that you will find is when you open this up or maximize the window, you'll find that it doesn't fully maximize. It kind of sits like this. What I'm going to do is just go into devices, insert guest edition CD image, and I'm going to hit run here. Now this will ask you for your password, the one that you set up during your startup or when you first installed. So we're just going to put that in. Okay, and then now you can press return to close this window. So, okay. Now the other thing that this will also do is put up a pop-up that says software updater. So we'll do the details of what needs to be updated. You can have a look. But basically, this is the software updater that will come up and pop up during your first start. And so you can just hit install now. This is going to take a little bit of time. And yeah, so I'll probably just stop the recording and then I'll continue on from here once that has completed. So you can see here that this is all just kind of updating all of these packages, and you can see what's happening here. Okay, so from here you can restart now. Okay, so you can minimize that and open it up, and now you can see that it is in full screen. So that's handy. So now welcome to your Ubuntu desktop. Let's take you through some of the stuff here. So we can eject this. This is from the guest edition CD image, so we can eject that and get rid of that. We can also remove this from favorites, and the other thing that we will get very familiar with is the terminal. So when you press this 9 dots here down the bottom, you can see all the applications that are installed here on your machine, and the most frequent ones as well. So I'm going to use this and add this to favorites, and so that now comes into this section here. Your Firefox for your web browsing, and this is your files. Now here are some files. This is your graphical user interface, which will then marry into your command line interface. So we'll have these side by side. Now, in terms of, this is your home directory, and this will be where you, I guess, do most of your work, and download things, and it's got the downloads folder, documents, videos, pictures, so on and so forth. Now you can see that in the command line as well. So if you list that out, ls, that will then marry up with all the folders that you see here as well, right? Now in terms of hidden folders, you might also want to have a look at those. So you can go into this button here and show hidden folders, and to get that in the command line is ll. So you can see here that you've got these dot files. Anything with dot files in them or dot config is a hidden file, and anything with a dot in front of it is a hidden file. So you can see all of those hidden files now here. You can also see who owns those files, and so your username is the owner of those files when they were created, so on and so forth. Okay, so this is how the graphical user interface and the the command line interface kind of just, yeah, marry up. Now, you've also got in other locations, you can also see your root directory. This is what's known as the, this is the Linux file system where all of this information is stored. So if you wanted to go into your home directory from here, it's home and Catan. And so that's your username, and that's where you'll eventually end up. And so this is just what's known as root, which is just a slash. Now your home directory in the command line is known as this squiggly line known as a tilde. So if you just type in cd tilde, then you can change directory into that into your home directory straight away, rather than typing in cd home /Catan, which will get you to the same place anyway. Okay, so that is where the location of your home directory is. Now, don't confuse the root, which is just a slash, as compared to the root folder. That's just something that you'll need to know. There's also a root folder, ROOT, as compared to just a slash. So you can see here cd slash, and now it'll change to just a slash there, and you can list that out, and you'll see that this list will marry up to what's in your graphical user interface here as well. Then you can cd into home /Catan. Oh, by the way, tab will also just auto-complete things for you. So /home, if you just press tab, it will complete that. So for example, if I was to go into my home directory, cd tilde, and list that out. And so if I say, for example, I wanted to change directory into do, okay, so this has two folders that have do, starting with do. So when you press tab, it's not going to do anything, but you press tab again and it gives you the options of do. But then as soon as you put in w and then press tab, it will auto-complete downloads. And so you can, and that will happen for files, that will happen for folders, it'll happen for everything. If you want to go one directory back, it's cd space ... And that is something that you will sort of, as you navigate around into the command line, you'll just get familiar with some of these commands. CD stands for change directory. And the other one is make dir. So if I wanted to make a directory and call it notes, and so now what I have here is a notes file, and if you marry that up into your command line, if you go into your home directory, you'll see there notes as well. Now, if I wanted to make a text file or edit a text file, I use a piece of software called Nano. So you can type in, say for example, nano mynotes.txt or mynote1.txt, and you can see here that this goes into a command line editing software, and so you can type in your notes, edit things, and you can now exit that by going Control X, and then it'll ask you, do you want to save this? And you say yes, so you put in Y for yes, and then it'll ask you, well, what's the file name that you want to write to? And you can just press enter, because that's the one that you've nominated back in the command line. So you press enter, and so in notes you will hopefully see, oh no, that is not in that directory, it's actually just here. Okay, so I've put that into the directory of the home because that's where I was. If I did this in cd notes and then I did my note2.txt, write whatever I want, and then Control X, Y for yes, I want to save that, and enter to write the file name, then you can see that that will now go into the notes directory. So now if we wanted to remove this or get rid of it, it's rm, and then you can type in m notes and then fill out the rest of the file with the tab button, and that will then disappear. It won't go into the recycling bin, it'll just disappear, it's gone. So just be very, very careful with that rm function. Now, if we go back and list that out, and I want to get rid of this mynote, I can just do that as well, mynote1, and it goes. Okay, so this is something that you can utilize. Now, if you want to delete a folder and its contents, it's rm-rf and then notes, and that should delete that entire folder. So then you now no longer have notes. So that is just basic, I guess, how to edit things. Now, in your home directory. Now, when you want to edit things that are not in your home directory, so for example, if you wanted to edit, which we will be doing a fair bit of, so say for example, if you wanted to edit something that is not in the home directory. So say you wanted to edit a service file. So have a look at this. All your service files, which I'll explain a little bit later. Service files are essentially scripts that you can use or that are used to start things automatically on the boot of your machine. So say for example you wanted to edit a service file. They're kept in etc systemd system, and you can have a look at all of these service files here, .service. Right, now say for example I wanted to edit one of these. So let's take for example, where would I use? Maybe I take display-manager.service. So I'd go nano display-manager.service. Now you'll notice here that it says that it's unwritable, and the reason that it's not writable is because you need what's known as sudo. Sudo stands for super user do, and you will notice that at the start here is to run a command as administrator, use sudo and then command. So what that means is essentially if I wanted to edit this file, I would just do sudo nano and then display-manager.service and then type in my password, and then I'd be able to get access into editing this file. Okay, so that is something that you will need to use extensively, but it's just important to be careful with when you use sudo. It stands for super user do, and it is basically giving you administrator privileges such that you can edit things on your machine that you probably shouldn't be anyway. So just be comfortable with getting around or using sudo and where to use it as well. So that is another thing. Now, if you want to use a previous command, the up button will do that for you. So if you keep pressing up, you'll get all your previous commands that you've typed in, and down will bring you back down. Also, to update packages, you're going to need sudo apt update. This will go out and fetch the Ubuntu servers and ask them, hey, are there any updates that need to be made? Any new packages that need to be installed? And so this is what's going out there. And it says here, one package can be upgraded, and you can view that. So by going sudo apt list -- upgradable, and you can see that this particular package needs to be upgraded. And so you can then upgrade that by going sudo apt upgrade. Okay, and so whenever you get like a configuration that kind of asks yes or no, if you just type in enter, the default will be whatever's in capital. So in this particular instance, I can just hit enter, or you can press Y and then enter, either way. And so then it will then upgrade this version of snapd, which is another package manager. That's how you would upgrade the existing packages on your machine. So those are some of the basic commands. Those are actually commands that you will use to and get familiar with throughout the series. Now, at this point, I'm going to just, now that everything's upgraded, I can just exit out of that. That'll remove there, and now I'm back into my desktop here. The other thing that you'll want to make note of is the IP address that your machine has been assigned. So if I go into my settings here and I go into the network, you will notice that my IP address for this particular machine is 192.168.2.193. That is an IP address that my router has assigned this virtual machine. Okay, so that is an important number that we will get familiar with. But for now, what I'm going to do is just shut down this machine, and I'm going to save it as a snapshot so that now I can write some notes as to what I have actually achieved here. So I'm going to power off and power off this. Now in here, in my Ubuntu notebox, I'm just going to go into this and go into snapshots section, and I'm going to take a snapshot. I'm going to call this fresh install. So maybe just talk Ubuntu fresh install, and I'm going to just give some description as to what I did. Ubuntu fresh installation, 2nd December 2020, and I can snapshot that. So that is now where you can sort of leave. If you ever need to go back to this particular like a fresh install, then you can just restore it and start from there, just in case in the event that something does go wrong when you're learning. So the current state is where you're at right now, and so you can just start that back up, and it will hopefully log back into your Ubuntu node box. Okay, so now let's get into installing a couple of things. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to install a VPN, and as well as some other packages that I think are required so that you have a good time installing other pieces of software, particularly Bitcoin related software. So I'm just going to fire up Firefox. And the first thing that I'm going to do is install a VPN on this machine. Now, I use Malvad VPN. The other thing that I wanted to make mention is if you want to copy and paste from the host machine to the to your local machine and vice versa, what you can do is go into the input section, the device section, and go into shared clipboard, and you can make it bi-directional. So that way you can sort of copy and paste things out of your virtual machine and into them as well. So I'm going to make that bi-directional. I'm going to download this software here, and it usually comes in a deb file. A .deb file is a way for you to install packages, and you can do that on the command line. So I'm going to download that here, and I'm going to save this file. So save that. Okay. So that's now going away and downloading. And I'm going to open up my terminal here as well, and I'm going to install it. So that gets installed into CD downloads in my downloads directory. So it'll be in here. So I'm going to go CD capital DOW tab, and I'm going to list that out. Okay, so that has now finished installing. So I'm getting this .deb file. The way you install these .deb files on the command line is sudo dpkg space -i and then the package that you want to install. So I'm just going to put in a capital MU and then hit tab, and that will completely autofill that whole thing out. So I'm going to then press enter. It'll ask me for my password, so I'll put that in, and away it goes in installing this package. Okay, so now if you look into your show applications, you go all. You should see a Malvad VPN package being installed, and so you can then open that up. It'll ask you for your login number, so let me just grab my one and put that in. You can create an account as well. So one of the great things about this is you can create an account and there is no login that you need. There's no email. It's just literally save this number, as they say. So this is one of the great features of Malvad VPN, is that you don't need an email to subscribe, and you can buy and purchase this on with Bitcoin. So that's really handy. I'm just going to log out of this one. So log out and put my one in, obviously, which does have some credits on it. And what I'll do is switch location, and I'm going to go closer to home for me. So I'm going to go Australia. And it is now connected. You can see here that this VPN is now connected. Now, what you can see is if I was not connected, so I'm just going to disconnect for now. Now, if I type in Google, what is my IP? It will give me this number here. Now, once I connect through, so connect, and that is connecting, and it's now connected. You type in what is my IP again, and once it has connected, and it will change your IP address. So this is now the IP address that you are publicly giving out to the world, and using this machine. So that is something that you will probably want to have on 24/7, just to improve your privacy. Now, when it comes to the preferences here, there's some good ones that you can use. For example, you can allow local network sharing. So that is something that you will want to give access to. So other machines on your network can access this node. So you can green that up. The other thing is launch an app on startup and auto connect. So those are some good preferences and settings here that are available to you. Now, here is another setting that you may wish to consider as well, is always require a VPN. If you disconnect or quit this app, the setting will block your internet. So that's another setting that you may wish to enable as well. So it will mean that there's a kill switch, so that your node, when it goes out to query others, and it will always display the Mulvad's IP address and not your own. So that's really handy to have as well. So that is the kill switch functionality in the advanced section, and then you can also have settings in the preferences as well. So those are some of the key features of just setting up your VPN and making this thing a little bit more private. Now, the other thing, to install a package from the apt manager, what you can do is, for example, sudo apt install tor, and you can install tor on this as well. So you just press enter for, do you want to continue? Yes. And so that will then download all of these packages and install them as well. So now what we have is a tor in the background, or it's kind of like a service that's running on your machine. And the way that you can access, or the status of it, is sudo systemctl status tor, and you'll see that it is active and it's started the overlay network, which is kind of what you want. To get out of this, it's just Control-C, and you can get back into wherever you were. Okay. You can also, so that now has successfully installed Tor onto our Ubuntu node box that we can use a little bit later. Okay. There's some other dependencies that I think are worthwhile mentioning. So I will, throughout the series, I will make mention of those dependencies as well, so that you have a good experience when it comes to running all of these things. So I think that kind of gives a good overview of your Ubuntu box. You can close all this out and close all this out, and you're back into how you would, but it also means that you are connected to a VPN and all that sort of good stuff as well. So that's handy. That should give you a basic overview of your operating system here. There isn't much yet, but we are now going to move on to installing Bitcoin, installing some packages and all that sort of stuff as well, so that you have a good time. Thanks for watching, and if you would like to support the work that I am doing, head on over to our website at ministryofnodes.com.au and click on the support button. We also have paid video tutorials, so feel free to check out our store for that. On our web store, you can find a booklet that contains the commands to the entire series, so feel free to check that out as well. And finally, we also offer private consulting sessions where we can discuss Bitcoin-related matters. Feel free to book in a session on our calendar. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.